Moving on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Relatively uneventful offseason. They lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a really good player that I like, but it's a big loss for sure. Luka Garza and Josh Minott. They added Joan Behringer in the draft, who's like a super raw French big, and some end of the bench guys. I think it's more likely that we just see more of like Terrence Shannon and Jalen Clark rather than a guy like Johnny Juzang, for example, but we'll see. The Timberwolves, painfully, as a Lakers fan, reminded me last year that they are one of the best playoff teams in the NBA. Regardless of how they look on any given night in the regular season, they're just so damn big and so damn strong and so damn physical and athletic and so damn competitive that they can just physically overwhelm you over the course of a series. But in each of the last 2 years, they've run into a combination of three things: an elite defense that can protect the rim and a superior superstar on the other team that could pick apart Minnesota's defense. And in both cases, their impressive playoff runs came to screeching halts. Now, on the defensive end, there's only so much you can do with the supreme superstars of the NBA, but I do think it's worth talking about the game planning. Like, I do think Chris Finch was foolish for having Jaden McDaniels pick up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that far away from the basket. That was foolish. But I don't necessarily think it changes the outcome of the series. It's just like one of the things. It's worth mentioning, for as good as Minnesota's defense was, both Oklahoma City and Dallas lit them up. So game planning obviously is going to be part of it as well, getting the most out of your defensive talent. But the biggest issue was their offense. Minnesota logged a 104 offensive rating in the 4 losses versus Oklahoma City. That's just not going to get it done. It starts with Ant. He's got to become a more resilient, less variance-dependent scorer. I talked a ton after the Western Conference Finals about how Shai badly outclassed Ant as a mid to short range scorer. And I thought it was literally the difference in the series. Shai outscored Ant 157 to 115 in that series. If your superstar gets outplayed to that extent, it's almost impossible to overcome. Now, what I said at the time was that Ant needed to build out reliable short range scoring. The ability to use his size and strength to get closer to the rim against the elite perimeter defenders of the league, but also to have a shot that he can shoot over the rim protector so he doesn't have to contend with those guys at the rim. So I was relieved when Shams Charania reported last week that Ant had spent all summer working on his post game and his mid to short range scoring. That means Ant is paying attention to what happened. It means he went back and watched the tape. He went back and looked at the numbers and he saw where the area of opportunity was. We shared these stats during our player ranking series, but I want to share them again. Ant posted up 27 times in the 2024 playoff run and got 1.19 points per possession. That's awesome. He posted up just 7 times total in the 2025 playoff run. It was a thing that really worked for him, and he like straight up abandoned it. There's a lot of talk about Ant's playmaking, and it's certainly something you want to see him to continue to incrementally improve on over the years, but he's averaging 6 assists per game on a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio over the last 2 playoff runs. Like, he's getting better. He'll continue to get better there. But his supreme gift is scoring the basketball. And right now, he's struggling to do that against the absolute best defenses in the league. That's where he needs to become more reliable. That heavy shift towards three-point shooting, it helped him in true shooting percentage in the regular season. It helped him hit higher scoring volume. I'm not saying he needs to stop taking threes, but he was 6 for 31 from 3 again in the 4 losses against Oklahoma City, because that's something that can happen when you rely on heavy, high-volume three-point shooting. Building out a reliable short-range scoring game will help him go bucket for bucket with guys like Shai and the best greats in the NBA. I thought the Julius Randle experiment went about as well as it could have gone, given the clunky fit. He shot better from 3 than you would think. Like, he was 40% over his last 21 regular season games and then 39% in the playoffs. He also provided like a face-up and low-post shot creation element to kind of get the defense into rotation. I hated his game 2 and game 4 against Oklahoma City. It felt like he was like openly pouting on the floor, but I'm trying to cut him at least a little bit of slack, just simply because Oklahoma City embarrassed a lot of guys with their defense in that playoff run. In general, I think he fits the identity of the team really well. He's a big, physical, ass-kicking forward that can really leverage that physicality in the postseason. He had 27 offensive rebounds in the playoffs, and he was a pretty efficient 24 points per game before the Minnesota series. I think that trade and that experiment worked out about as well as it possibly could have, given the way it looked at the time of the trade. Those two guys ultimately control this team's destiny. The defense is the defense. They definitely need more from Chris Finch in game planning, like we talked about, to prevent your defense from just completely falling apart against Luka and SGA. So, like, more mixing up of coverages, including some zone, more willingness to adjust when things aren't working. I don't think the Nickeil Alexander-Walker loss greatly affects their fortunes. Like, he wasn't in their best five. He's very good. I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I wanted him on the Lakers this summer, but like, he's not in their best five. And I do think in the regular season, guys like Terrence Shannon and Jalen Clark can be productive enough to prevent much of a drop-off there. And one of those guys, one of those two dudes will end up popping just enough to be able to give you a shift or two per game when they get to the postseason. They also match up really well with Denver, which I think is a strong foundation for a case that Minnesota could win the conference. They just need to be able to score the ball when they face an elite defense that can protect the rim. So essentially what I'm saying is they've got to be able to handle Oklahoma City if they can get there. And that's going to depend on Julius Randle avoiding those disaster games and Anthony Edwards becoming a better and more reliable scorer, hopefully built around the idea of short to mid-range scoring, as well as the incremental improvements as a playmaker. The pathway's there for Minnesota. Like, it's easy to see. Minnesota gets on the opposite side of the bracket from Oklahoma City and Denver, and Denver upsets Oklahoma City. You get Minnesota, Denver in the conference finals. Repeat of what happened 2 years ago. All of a sudden, you're in the finals and you're probably favored when you get there. But again, that's not guaranteed. There's a good chance you run into Oklahoma City somewhere along the way, especially if they end up with the 1 and 2 seed. So at that point, you're going to have to solve that puzzle when you get there.